Time to reveal the first results from our latest Talk Business and Politics Hendrix College survey. In this survey, we only polled likely Republican primary voters. You would have had to have voted in at least 2 of the last 3 GOP primaries in Arkansas to make the cut. 676 Republican primary voters surveyed, margin of error plus or minus 3.8%. Our first question regarding support from Republicans for Arkansas Works, Governor Asa Hutchinson's Medicaid expansion plan, and an updated version of the private option. We asked, as you may know, Arkansas instituted a program using federal Medicaid dollars to provide private insurance to low-income Arkansans through healthcare exchanges. This program is now called Arkansas Works. Do you support or oppose the Arkansas Works program? 41.5% support, 25.5% oppose, 33% don't know. And another result from the survey, as you know, Governor Hutchinson is a primary challenger from gun range owner Jan Morgan. We asked this question: if the Republican primary election for governor was being held today and the candidates were Jan Morgan and Governor Asa Hutchinson, for whom would you vote? 30.5% for Jan Morgan, 57.5% for Governor Asa Hutchinson, 12% undecided. Now, the primary is May 22nd, so these numbers may change some in the next few weeks. Over the next few days, we'll be rolling out more poll results, including what Republican voters think about President Donald Trump and their views on taxes, abortion, and gun laws. I think you'll be surprised by some of the results. We also plan to do some Democratic polling in a few weeks. We'll look at the Democratic governor's race and the 2nd Congressional District Democratic primary. After the break, Dr. Jay Barth, professor of political science at Hendrix College, joins me to discuss these findings. We're back with more after this. Welcome back to the program. We're now joined by Dr. Jay Barth, professor of political science at Hendrix College. He's one half of our partnership of Talk Business and Politics, Hendrix College, and our polling endeavors there. Fun stuff. In the previous segment, we rolled through the Asa versus Jan numbers and the Arkansas Works numbers. I want to go policy first. Okay. We'll get to the good stuff a little later. Okay. Arkansas Works, a big public policy issue we've been following for years. 41% support, 25% oppose among Republican voters. That's a big swing from what we've seen in previous years.
Yeah. What we were seeing, historically was in statewide numbers, Democrats quite supportive, but Republicans, much more wary of this program. But always because it was a bipartisan program with some Republican support, and I think that did begin to grow a little bit after Governor Hutchinson kind of took over the program, rebranded it, and added some additional requirements, including the work requirements that have now been approved. And Republican support has ticked up. It's in the 40s, low 40s. It's certainly there's some wariness about it. I think there are
from us covering it as well, Jay.
Yeah. So. But I think it's not an uncontroversial program. But I think that the governor has been quite successful in making it his own program and building support in his own party.
Let's talk about the governor and his support within his own party here. Yep. We've got him at 57.5%. If the election were today, we asked Republican primary voters, would you vote for Asa Hutchinson, Jan Morgan? 57.5% for Asa, 30.5% for Jan, 12% undecided. What was the biggest surprise to you in these numbers?
I think the biggest surprise is the fact that this race is going to really be determined by who actually turns out to vote. Maybe that shouldn't be a surprise. Maybe that's politics 101. But
you're alluding to the fact that in 2016 we had these Trump voters that came out that had never voted in Republican primaries before. Will they show up again?
Right. And I think that it's important going into that presidential primary in Arkansas in March of 2016. I think most people thought the establishment would ultimately win that, the Marco Rubio or even Ted Cruz, who kind of represented different branches of establishment Republicanism. But Trump won it with this huge turnout. I think the question is, does the Trump voter turn out to vote in a Republican primary again? And these are voters who tend to have lower education rates, who tend to be less religious in terms of their going to church on a regular basis. They tend to be more rural. They tend to be the kinds of folks who don't turn out in primaries. And if they do turn out, while Asa Hutchinson, I think unquestionably is going to win this primary, I think if those voters turn out in large numbers, Morgan could maybe get into the low 40s. I mean, that would be probably the top that we're seeing from this.
She won't want to hear you say that.
But I think that for considering how much money has been put in on her side and considering her name recognition when this race began, that's pretty impressive and does show an ongoing division within the Republican Party in Arkansas.
And to, I guess, to quell some potential concerns about this, when we structured this poll and this primary database here, we looked at Republican primary voters who had voted in at least 2 of the last 3 primaries to capture some of that potential one-time Trump support. People may remember that in 2016, when we did some analysis of who actually turned out to vote there in that presidential primary, I think that 50% had voted in 0 or 1 of the last 2 or last 4 Republican primaries. So it was a first-time voter. We think we've captured a strong enough contingency of that in this poll.
But I think that if it is a traditional establishment, Northwest Arkansas, Central Arkansas, kind of a Republican electorate, Asa Hutchinson could actually, expand this lead pretty significantly. If it is a more statewide Republican primary vote, where some counties which historically had not had much Republican turnout actually have good Republican turnout, those are Trump voters. Those are going to be the kind of folks that cause the governor a little bit more of a headache.
Yeah, and let's say, too, the governor has a big war chest. He has yet to really start spending. We're about to see, I think, the tip of that expenditure for the next 30 days or so on television and radio airwaves, and Jan Morgan does not have as big of a war chest, and that can move some numbers we have seen traditionally. Again, I think the other big surprise to me was 12% undecided. I mean, I feel like Asa Hutchinson, while he is obviously a very known Republican figure, Jan Morgan seems to be fairly introduced to a lot of Republican voters, whether that's through social media, a lot of the appearances that she's been making on the circuit and the talking and the speaking trail there, and I feel like she's kind of a bit of a known commodity. Do you get that same sense?
Yeah, and I think that the Republican electorate statewide is a fairly discrete, identifiable electorate. But the question is, does it continue to grow as the Trump insurgency really begins to make its imprint on this Republican Party in Arkansas?
And the age-old question that I have had a lot of conversations with GOP consultants, strategists, operatives, observers is, do those Trump voters, they came out to vote for Donald Trump in 2016. They're not coming out to vote for Donald Trump in 2018 because he's not on the ballot. So maybe they're voting for a surrogate or what they think is him, but they do not come out as enthusiastically.
Yeah, and I think the question is there an imprint of a Trump voter that has staying power beyond Trump? That's the key question. And I think Jan Morgan is a particularly good test of that hypothesis.
All right, a couple things that strike me too in the crosstabs. You mentioned a little bit of this earlier. Age, gender, and education. We do see Jan Morgan perform well with those with less education. Asa Hutchinson does better with those with higher education. Asa Hutchinson does better with older voters by far.
Much better with older voters.
I was surprised too. He has a big gender advantage over her. She's a female. She does not seem to resonate with female Republican voters as much as Asa Hutchinson does.
Yeah, and conversely, Jan Morgan overperforms with male voters, and I think it makes a lot of sense. I mean, the kind of establishment, the folks who show up at and have shown up at every Republican event and election for years, that is Asa Hutchinson's Republican Party. They are solid. He has been at a backbone of this party for so long. They are there for him. It's the question, does that get partly overwhelmed by a new type of Republican voter?
All right, we got some other stuff that we're not going to get into today, but let's preview it for everyone because we'll be rolling out on Monday and Tuesday of next week. We'll be rolling out the fact that we also surveyed these Republican primary voters on Trump's numbers. Where is his approval? I think people will be very surprised by what we have in those numbers there, particularly compared to what we see in this governor's race matchup. And we also previewed or tested their positions on guns, on abortion, and on taxes.
Yeah, it's a good.
Give me a little sneak preview of what you think people should be interested in finding out about
Well,
it?
I think it's in essence, I mean, it's a very conservative party. I think that's no big surprise. But we do see some factionalism on some of these issues. And, our goal was really to, as in testing these statewide candidate numbers, also to get a picture of who is the Republican voter of 2018.
And you think that people will know who it is once it's said and done?
Yeah.
You do?
Well.
All right. He's Dr. Jay Barth. He's a professor of political science at Hendrix College. His work is always good. You can go to our website at talkbusiness.net. You can catch his analysis. Robert Kuhn, GOP strategist with Impact Management Group, is going to be working with us this campaign season 2. He will also have some analysis at that website, and he'll join us the next time that we're together here on the desk, hopefully. So, thank you so much, Jay. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Thank you for tuning in. That's all for today's Talk Business and Politics. I'm Roby Brock. We'll see you next time.